Welcome back to the course of Ansible. I am Praveen and we are discussing about configuring Ansible for today's lecture. Earlier in the previous two lectures, we have discussed about introduction to Ansible, and the previous lecture we discussed about how we're going to use Ansible and how did we install Ansible on master and client nodes. We are also discussed how to use Amazon Web Services as an engine to demonstrate our Ansible lecture. So in the previous classes, we have launched 3 to 4 virtual machines, one being a master and the rest being the nodes being slaves. So we have installed Ansible on all the machines. We have demonstrated the SSH passwordless authentication between all those machines using the test accounts. So after which, now we have come to the concept of configuring the Ansible on master nodes. So we are going to configure Ansible in my master nodes here. We are going to go through step by step and how it is being configured and what are the steps that should be taken. So the first and foremost step to configure Ansible is the configuration file, the Ansible configuration file. The Ansible configuration file is actually existed in etc and Ansible directory. You can see ansible.cfg is a configuration file. Let's go through this configuration file step by step. I can just type more and read the configuration file one by one. Just go through more ansible.cfg. We can see that nearly all parameters can be overridden in this Ansible file or a configuration file of the playbook. So the default files which is given by Ansible is etc Ansible hosts. That is the inventory file. We are going to discuss about inventory file, which is critical in Ansible courseware. We have libraries, which is in path of USR share my modules. We have a remote temperature where we are it's a remote temporary directory where we are having all temporary files of Ansible. It's a hidden file. We have local temporary directory. We have folks, which is going to tell us how much the Ansible should fork if there's no response from the client. And we have a poll interval. It's gonna check every 15 seconds for the input and the output from each the client and the master nodes. We are having a sudo user to mention that, okay, if you want to use a sudo privilege, then we can just configure sudo_user in this configuration file. And nearly it can be overridden using a command line interface. You can ask for the sudo password every time if you want to use Ansible command. That can be tagged as true or false according to the requirement. The transport module is smart, and the remote protocol, it uses only SSH 22 port protocol, and the module is set is true. If you just go deep inside the further of the configuration file, there are a lot of stuffs where we can just use it according to the requirement. If you want to use roles factor, then we can use Ansible roles path, which is hashed as of now. If you want to use host check, always if you want to connect to SSH and if you want to check if the host is available or not, we can use host key checking false. And there are a lot of options which it's an advanced module which we are not using as of now. This will be used as and when we progress into our class, and this is the main configuration file. It's always good to take a backup of this configuration file and keep it for safer side. So we are going to take the backup of this. We are going to use sudo copy ansible.cfg ansible.cfg.original. We're going to take the backup of this file in order to proceed further. This is an important configuration file and it's going to work everywhere if you want to use this in terms of Ansible. So it's always good to take a backup of the file. The next lecture which we are going to discuss now is Ansible Python dependencies. So usually we know that Ansible has been dependent on Python, and it requires Python privileges to make sure that the Ansible functions very well. In order to test the Python which is involved in Ansible, we're going to test whether we have appropriate installed packages in all the machines. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use clear the screen in master, then use sudo yum list installed and grep with Python. This will give me all the Python packages, and all the Python packages which is gonna tell me whether I have a Python installed or not. Yes, we have the Python installed. We can see it's installed on 7.2. So we're gonna verify whether we have Python installed and on all the other machine as well. So you can just use yum installed. It's sudo yum installed because we are using as a test user. Sudo yum install grep with Python and list. Okay, so sudo yum list install. That is the problem, the first command. So we are going to use list installed and type Python to make sure that all the Python packages are installed, it's going to take some time. So we're going to try in third node sudo yum list installed grep with Python. Yeah, we can see Python is installed in node 2 as well. We're going to see Python installed in node 1 as well. We're going to see Python installed in the node 3 as well. If it's not installed, we should install it, because Ansible completely depends on Python. And we can see that Ansible is already installed in previous lecture, where we can just verify using Ansible ---- version, and we have a configuration file called ansible.cfg. So once we are installed the Python, we need to test whether Python is able to run. So how do we check the Python version? So we can just type Python, and we can come to know it's 2.7.5. We need to make sure that Python is same across all the machines. Yes, 2.7.5, Python 2.7.5, Python 2.7.5. So in order to, let's quit this. So we're going to use command quit to make sure that we are quitting out of this Python interpreter, clearing the screen of all the nodes. So make sure that we are in the right path when we demonstrate the Ansible properly. Yeah, quit, clear it. So let's write a simple Python program to make sure that it's gonna function fine. So we're gonna do vi hello world program of Python, and we're gonna type the Python properly. Like, we are gonna use the hello world program of Python. Yes, we are gonna put a header. Yours are bin Python, and hello world Python program, print hello world. So I want to save this, and we're going to run as a Python module. Okay, I think we need to use sudo in order to save the file here, because it's in etc Ansible. So we're going to go to test, and we're going to use hello Python, paste it, save it, run the program. So it is showing some syntax error. I'm gonna just remove the syntax. It should throw the output of print hello world. Yeah, the Python program is a little bit wrong. We need to fix that hello world program, hello world Python program. So let me just check in Google hello world to just to function that whether the Python is working as expected. So just go to interactive Python tool. We can just see any code for Python to make sure that we are using proper command for this. User bin Python. I'm gonna see good my world. Let's see if it's gonna function or not. Yeah. So if you want to use only, you can use just py, I believe. So you can just py should work if you put up the shortcuts. Python is working fine in master node, and it should work fine in the test nodes as well. Just let me test in one node where we can see whether Python is working fine or not. Vi hello.py. We're gonna put usr bin Python hello world. I'm just print, and we're gonna put hello world Python hello world. Oops, it's Python, it's not Python. So we can see it's working fine as expected. So we verify that the Python is working as expected in nodes as well. So that's a critical part. If Python is not working, then Ansible is no way to work in future. So check the Python items installed as well, and write a short program to make sure that everything is working as expected. Now, and after that, we are now discuss about something called overriding the default system Ansible.cfg lecture. So um, if there's a requirement to make sure that yes, we are not going to use we should not use the default system Ansible.cfg configuration file, we can override it and put our Ansible configuration file. How does we do that? So in order to override, let us just verify where the Ansible .cfg file exists. So we know that it is in at etc Ansible, and we can see Ansible.cfg exists. So usually whenever the Ansible runs, it is going to take this file. Some cases where we don't want the Ansible to take this file, you want to take your own file, customized file, and you don't want Ansible to take this default file. In such a cases, we need to override this file. How do we do that? Before doing that, let's check whether the path has been set by Ansible is at appropriate location. So if you just use a command set grep with Ansible, set So you can see the present working directory of Ansible is etc Ansible. If you change this particular path and give different particular path, then we can easily tell that whenever the Ansible runs in the next time, it is not going to check etc Ansible path, it is going to check the predefined path set by you. So how do we set that? We can easily set using the command called export ansible underscore config equal to slash home slash test slash config slash my ansible.cfg. When you do this, the moment you do this, you can just set grep hyphen I ansible. You can see the normal file is been overrid with our own configuration file. So the next time an Ansible tries to run this file, it's gonna take our file rather than it's gonna rely on this particular file. So this one is critical, and overriding of this configuration file we can do. And this, if you just go to this particular path, we don't have the file as of now. So sorry, we don't have the particular file, so we can just copy this particular file. We just need to copy this particular file, and we can see there's no first file or directory. What we are going to do now is, like, we know the original file is available here. Just copy this file, ansible.cfg.original. Copy this file into that location, in my home directory location. So there's no file as of now, so we are going to touch that file. Cannot touch. We need to use sudo touch. Yeah. So touch no such file or directory. What we can do is, we can just go to that particular path, and we are into the touch directory, and we can create one directory, mkdir config. Go inside the config directory, and we can create one file called myansible.cfg. So we have created the file. We have that file in the particular location, but we don't have the default parameters. What we can do is, like, we can etc copy the original file there, copy -r, copy this Ansible original file in that location, in this particular location. Copy the original file, then modify as and when required. This is the original file. You can modify and make sure the Ansible uses your own file next time it is going to run. So this is the way you override. So you can just verify the override using set pipeline grep and grep hyphen I Ansible. So if you want to remove this override, then what we can do is export and see. Let's just check the ansible underscore config in the other machine to make sure that what is the default path available. Set grep hyphen I ansible underscore config. So I think it is not there. I mean, it's not reflecting unless and until we set it. So what we can do is set ansible underscore config, set ansible underscore config to slash etc slash ansible slash ansible.cfg. So the moment you do that, you can see the Ansible is been set, and we can see in etc ansible, you can see the Ansible config file, and the next time it's going to read ansible.cfg file. This is how you override ansible.cfg file. So this is why this is important. The overriding of configuration file is important due for application developers or testers when they want to create their own customized file and they don't want to use Ansible provided configuration file. They can override the default Ansible configuration file depending on the requirements. We can also override roles path. How do you override roles path? It's very simple. We can just go to ansible.original, copy this file and make it roles modified. Rename it roles dot modified. So we need to use sudo for this because we don't have privileges for directly running as root. Okay, once we did this, we can just go to roles modified file. Yeah, the roles modified file. Okay, just check whether we have the file or not. No such file or directory. Yeah, we have the file, but we need to do a vi. So we go to this thing, do a vi, and just go to roles path. We can see the roles path is default etc ansible roles. If you want to override your roles path, just tab and type roles underscore path space equal space etc Ansible. Instead of that, we can give your home directory /home /test roles. So we can actually modify roles using this kind of setup in Ansible configuration. I don't want to do this now. It's just to make sure it's happening. It can be done and used by the application team whenever they require it. So once we are finished with overriding default system Ansible configuration file and roles path, the main important thing is the host file. Host file are really much important to make sure that we have a inventory management. The host file is actually good, and it need to know how to use this host file if you want to be maintain an infrastructure of 1,000 nodes or 10,000 nodes. If the infrastructure is very huge, the host file is very critical. So what we're going to do now is we need to make sure the host file um, configure appropriately in order to test whether the Ansible is doing good or not. So what we can do now is before running the host files, I think we are sure with how to override a roles path, how to override Ansible.cfg path, and we have just worked on Python dependencies and learned of some of the terms in Ansible configuration file. So now the host file is a critical one, and it should be need to make sure that we are taking a backup of it. If you just not sure of what are the important configuration file, then you need to make sure that at least host file is a critical one, because it contains all the inventories and all the host stuff. So once I've taken the original backup, I'm going to just vi to host file. So before viing the host file, I'm going to run this simple Ansible command, Ansible um, Ansible all --list -hosts. This command is going to show me if there is any host available in etc Ansible host file. Since there is no host, it's going to show me 0. I'm going to add few hosts under etc Ansible host. The hosts are nothing but the nodes. The hosts are nothing but the nodes. Here we are having a 3 nodes and 1 master setup. So we are sure that okay, this is a little simple setup, but in a complex environment where there are 100 to 500 nodes and there are 1,000 nodes, then it should be very feasible for us to manage in a host configuration file. It's always good to take up a backup. So as I showed you earlier, if you just run this command, we are not going to get any host. So I'm going to add some host in my machine. So I'm going to just sudo vi host. If it does do, this is a sample file which it's given by Ansible installation file. I'm going to delete all these files. I'm going to delete all these lines to make sure I have my own host file, because I've already taken the backup. Okay, so I'm going to put local. I'm going to group hosts using the square brackets, and I'm going to put local because I am going to add my own local machine, which is a master machine, and term it as local host. I'm going to name Apache web, and I'm going to put 2 IPs under that. So one of the IP is node 1 IP. So I'm going to go grab the IP, node 1 IP, private IP. Make sure when you are working internally, we are going to use private IP, and I'm going to put another node 2 private IP in Apache web. So understand the groupism here. First one is a local host, which is a local machine. Apache web is a group which are web servers to be installed in future. I'm grouping in that, and I'm gonna use another one is app server. This is my application server. I'm gonna add node 3 private IP in it. Remember the reason why we did passwordless SSH and authentication earlier, because the moment we add into the host, the master server tries to communicate to all the other nodes, recursively, to make sure that there is no password problem happened. So that's why we made passwordless authentication at the beginning itself. So now if you just type Ansible hall space --, hosts, just type, you can see there are 4 hosts. One is a local host, and the other 3 machines are the nodes. Earlier it wasn't there. So this proves us that we are added machines into Ansible configuration. The more the environment grows, the more infrastructure grows, the more the host file is going to add up. So this is what is stuff. And okay, so we are in the host file. There are cases where the application team will tell, hey, I don't want to use etc ansible host file, I want to use my own host file. How do you override this host file? As I told earlier, we have overridden roles, we have overridden configuration using export, but how do you override the host file? So what we can do is, I'm going to go to my home directory. Remember, there is no host file now. There is no host file now, but original host file is etc ansible hosts. The original host file is that, because that is the default host, ls-l etc ansible host. Sorry, we have a space here. Oops. So etc ansible hosts, we can see the host file available there. By default, Ansible takes this file because if you just read the configuration file, as I told you earlier, ansible.cfg, you can see the inventory is this marked, but I don't want to edit that file in the configuration file to make sure that, to tell Ansible that, okay, this is not my host file, the other host file is available. If some application team or the testing team asks me, I want to rewrite my host file, I don't want to use the Ansible provided host file. So what we can do is, like, we can override using our own host file. So what we can do is, I'm gonna type hosts, and I'm gonna type my host. I'm just gonna give node 3 IP inside it, so paste it. So I have just created a file called host, but still Ansible will take the original etc ansible host file because it is put up in a configuration file. If I want to use my host file, I will let you know in few seconds. Before that, let me just test the configuration connectivity from Ansible to all the other nodes. How do we test it? So you can use a simple command Ansible. Before that, let's check whether I have all the hosts available. Ansible all -list -hosts. Yes, I can see the host available, and we can grep the host Apache Web and Apache server. I need to check whether I can able to connect to Apache Web group and Apache server app server group. How do you connect that? You can use a command called Ansible Apache Web -m ping. So what does this command do? It is using the module called ping, and it is connecting to the group called Apache Web, and it is going to test the ping between these two machines, this one and this one, the node machine. So I'm going to just enter ping. The moment I enter that, I can see that it is connecting to two machines, which is ping and which is pong. That means it is responding, it's showing success. If one of the machine is not responding, it's going to show false. So how do I do that? So I'm just going to shut down this SSH service in the node 2. Remember, this one is 157 IP, 172.31.2.157. So this is 157 IP. So I'm going to shut this service down. So I'm going to do systemctl service sshd stop. Oops. Okay, I'm systemctl sshd. Sorry. Stop sshd. This is the command. It's gonna ask EC2 ID password authenticators cloud user EC2 to manage systems service units. I'm going to switch to root and stop the service. So I'm going to use sudo systemctl stop sshd. I have stopped it. You can just see the command sudo service sshd status. I can see the SSHD is inactive. So the moment I use Ansible Apache Web -ping to check, it is showing red. That means the SSHD has been stopped and it's not able to connect to that machine. It is showing green for the other machine because the other machine is running fine. I'm gonna make sure SSHD is started back again. I started the SSHD, just check the service of the SSHD. It is showing active running, and just run the command again. See the way Ansible communicates to each of the other nodes inside the group, and to make sure that everything is running good. And remember that it is going to use the host file in etc ansible hosts. But if I want to use my host file, which is mentioned here, so just mentioned host file here, I have a 151 server, which is a node 3 here. So I want to see whether I can able to connect to that. But the moment I use Ansible Apache web, or maybe like I need to use my host here. See, if I use my host and say my host hyphen mping, it won't connect because it's still connecting to etc ansible host. It's still connecting to this file, and this file does not have my host. If I want to use my own ansible inventory file, so what I can do is I can use hyphen I option. So that is called overriding of host file. So as I discussed earlier, this is what is called overriding of the host file. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use hyphen I at my host ping. Okay. um, I'm going to use my host hyphen I hosts hyphen mping. So now it's going to connect. So fail to connect to trust via SSH. So it has some problem to connect to this machine. So let's see whether SSH service is running or not. It's running already. So why is it connecting? So let's check out why the hell it's not connecting. Sorry. Oh, so we need to make sure it's connecting appropriately to that particular machine using the overriding the host file. So this one, my host, I'm going to give IP instead of my host to check whether I can able to connect to that machine. I'm going to use the IP of this machine. True, it's why unreachable. True. So but if you see etc ansible hosts 151, if I just try to connect app server, let me see it's connecting or not. Ansible hyphen m, no, Ansible app server, Ansible app server hyphen m ping. Let me see whether it's connecting or not. It's not connecting, so that means SSH is not happening properly. SSH is not happening properly for the node 3. It's asking for the password. That is the reason. I think the SSH connectivity is not done properly for this machine. So I can just use SSH hyphen copy hyphen ID to this machine to see whether it's happening properly or not. Yes. So let's see whether it should work now. Yeah, it's asking for password. So what I can do is SSH hyphen copy hyphen ID. So it's not asking password now. So now I should able to use the command ping. It's showing. So this is the reason earlier lecture I told you all that it should be having a passwordless SSH authentication perfectly fixed. So there was a minor problem. So I fixed this just now. We can see that it's able to connect to host file. Okay. I was just explaining about the overriding the host file. So if I'm using Ansible all hyphen m ping, it is gonna take the main host file, that is etc ansible hosts. It's gonna take the main host file, that is etc ansible host, and okay. In order to fix this, we need to have SSH copy hyphen id local host. So one machine is, yeah, now we can see it's fixed. The same thing should work if you are able to configure the host file here and inventory file here. So this is a client machine, node machine. If I want to convert that node machine as a master machine, what I do is like before that I need to show how to override the host file, isn't it? So if I just type this command, it's actually taking from the main configuration file, from the main etc ansible host configuration file. If I want to use this host file, so how do I use that? So I can just use Ansible my host hyphen I hosts hyphen m ping. It should able to work. Yes, it is working now, because now it is not able to connect to etc ansible host. We are already overrid that file and we are able to connect to this particular machine using hyphen I option. So there are two cases. You can use the default Ansible file for verification or for your purposes, or you create your own host file and try this services setup available. If the node wants to be converted as a master file, what we can do is just edit etc ansible hosts. Just delete everything because we already have a backup in some other machine. So we want to put insert, but before that let's grab the details etc Ansible hosts. Grab this completely and put it here. This can be converted into a master now. SSH copy id localhost in order to avoid errors. Okay, so Ansible all hyphen m module ping. It is gonna try connecting to all the other servers including master, node 2, node 3, and we need to make sure that it's connecting appropriately. Yeah, we just it is gonna ask for the first time whether authentication is happening properly or not. The next time it's gonna do it properly. So let it run. It takes some time. So since we are running it on a local host, we need to remove this IP because we are already given localhost and we are already given its own server's IP address. We need to remove this IP in the host file. So the same thing applies here. We have not added 156 here in this host file because we already added localhost. So for this we need to remove this one, and 151 we need to check the connectivity issues because um, this machine was not set up proper. It's a newly added machine. So what we need to do is hosts, sorry, vi etc Ansible to Ansible. This Ansible checks whether SSH is happening properly or not as well. So 158 will be removed and 156 will be added. And yeah, the once is added, okay, we need to make sure that it is editable. So we were not logged in as sudo, so sudo vi etc Ansible hosts, paste it and save it. So we need to check whether this machine is connecting via password. Yeah, it's asking for password. That shows the error. So SSH copy ID, give the IP. That's it. So I think it's also one function as SSH copy ID. Okay, so this one already been added. This copy ID. So I think I already logged into that machine now. So this machine test whether I can able to log in. Yes, it should not log in with password. Okay, SSH copy ID. Yeah, it's working now. If you just run the Ansible all hyphen m ping, it should connect to 51151. So let's clear this. Let's clear this. Let's see. Yeah, it's working fine. So this way we can test the functionality of ping and pong from each machines using Ansible technology. So what else? So this is a host file. If you want to override the host file, you need to use -i option and create one host file. I will show another example of overriding the host file. I have the one file called more etc Ansible hosts. I don't know to use this for host file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my own host file. So vi hosts. I'm going to put 156 machine into my host file. I can group it or I can't. I can directly put as a IP. And if I want to check the host file Ansible the IP -i hosts -m ping, it's going to check my host file which is present in my home directory, rather than it is not going to check the global host file. Let me see. It's going to take some time. Yeah, it's going to check which is present in my home directory, rather than it's not going to take the global host file present, because we are already overrid using -i option. So here comes to the end of the host file, and as the course progresses on, we are going to use host file for longer duration, and you'll be capable enough to use host file in your production environment very soon. And it's very easy because Ansible reads the files from top to down approach, and um, yeah, that's it from the host file. Now we are going to discuss about Ansible modules. So Ansible modules are nothing but the modules which are written pre-default from Ansible, and we can use those modules as and when we require according to the requirement. So um, the best examples of the modules is like the ping module which we just checked. The ping module which we just checked, we have used the ping module. We have a huge modules chapter coming up in chapter number 4 or 5, so we can explain all the modules one by one, but just one example of ping module has been shown here. If you just go to the Ansible website and just type Ansible modules, and you can see there are almost numerous Ansible modules available, which is our core modules, which are extra one modules. So these core modules and extra modules are pre-default given by Ansible, and we can use them as per our requirement. So these are nothing but a kind of package which we can use. A ping is a module, and shell is a module. So one another best example of a module is a shell, and we can use yum as a module as well, and setup as a module. If I just use Ansible local, if I want to just check the local parameter of the machine, if I use module called setup is a module from Ansible, and if I just type more, it is going to show me Ansible local -m setup module. Setup shows all the items available in my machine. So if I want to just grep Ansible underscore star, it is going to show me all Ansible products, Ansible stuff here using the module. So there are huge number of modules from package management to setup to network. Everything can be used according to the requirements. So by default, if we just go through the Edureka slide here, we are describing modules are the units of work in Ansible. Each module is mostly standalone and can be written in standard scripting language like Python, Perl, Ruby. You can create your own module. One of the guiding properties of module is idempotency, which means that even if the operation is repeated multiple times, that is upon the recovery of the outage, it's always placed into the system of the same state. You will come to know about idempotency as and when we start working on the modules in the 5th chapter. And Ansible tasks. So we are just executed our ad hoc commands. The main important concepts of Ansible is the playbooks. So when we are able to write the playbooks, we are having something called tasks. Tasks are nothing but the list of work or the list of implementations that should be done using Ansible. So each task is written in the form of play, and that has been executed as a playbook. So if we are discussing about the Ansible playbooks, the tasks come into the picture. So once we start discussing Ansible playbook, you can easily understand what task is. Tasks are usually executed in order. So once the playbook has been explained, you will understand what task is. It's just an intro where we can make sure that the tasks are executed in order, and against all the machines the tasks are written in a playbook and return, it's run on all the machines available in the nodes. So ad hoc commands are something which we just did it now. Ad hoc command is something that we want something really quick, something like this. We want really quick. This is the ad hoc command. And if you want to use any kind of, if you want to check the uptime in all the machines, what we can use is Ansible all -s -m. -s is a sudo, -m is a shell, -a, just type uptime. It is going to execute uptime and get the output from all the machines. You can see the machines are up since one day, and one machine is up since 1 hour 23 minutes. So this shows the uptime of all the machines. If you want to just showcase the date parameter from all the machines, you can see these are all ad hoc commands. As we progress into our Ansible chapter further, we can make sure that these ad hoc commands are a helpful feature where you can grab the data immediately and put on the data. This is a shell module which is going to grab a date command and execute the date in all the local machine as well as in the remote nodes. If you want to just check any kind of something like cat etc red hat release, to check the release parameter, you can just use this command also, you can come to know what is the release parameter available. So you can see here it is going to execute on all the hosts mentioned here in etc ansible hosts. So it's going to run in all those and it throws the output. If you want to just check the df-h or the mount points available in all the machines, just type this command, you'll come to know all the df-h output is available. So this is what is the ansible command or the haddock commands do. If you want to check a kind of a mount in all the machines, just execute this mount, then you can see all the mount available in one shot. How Ansible does it very fast. If you are doing it manually, it takes a lot of time to make sure that you want to grab a data, or if you want to mount all file system in all the servers, just use mount -a. It is going to mount all the file systems and it's not going to throw in output because we are sure that all the file systems are mounted. If you want to check the service status, so if you want to see service, if you want to see service SSHD status on all the machines, just type this command. It is going to get the service status on all the machines available. If the service is not running, if I see, okay, I know there's HTTP. If you want to check HTTPD status, and I'm not sure whether the HTTPD is running, you can see HTTPD is not running and the Apache HTTP server is not running. So that's why it's showing as red state. And in one machine, in 157 machine, we can see the HTTPD is running. That's why it's showing in green. So this fast the Ansible works to make sure that the work is done very simple. The manual work is automated in a very faster way, and it avoid the problem of executing the commands in multiple nodes and throws the output here. So this is what Ansible order commands do. And well, tasks and roles will modules we're going to discuss in much in playbook. I think you are aware of the host file, overriding the default roles path, overriding the system Ansible configuration file, and dependencies of Python configuration file as well. So these are the important things of Ansible in order to configure it properly. Thank you for listening this module, and soon we're going to start with the playbook module in the next chapter. Thank you so much.